All right. What is RFK Jr. up to?
So Andrew Kaczynski of the K-File, no relation to me, he dug up this old clip, released it on CNN. RFK Jr. used to have a radio show. Back in the day, it used to be on Air America Radio. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was like supposed to be the liberal alternative to like Rush Limbaugh and all those types. And the stuff he used to say about Trump is what you would expect from what they would call the most deranged, what do they call Trump derangement syndrome type in the country, right? Mm-hmm. So here, we'll play this and then we'll react.
One of the things that you write so beautifully, and your stuff is so fun to read, but you write about Trump. Quote, the way that you build a truly vicious nationalist movement is to wed a relatively small core of belligerent idiots to a much larger group of opportunists and spineless fellow travelers whose primary function is to turn a blind eye to things. We may not have that many outright Nazis in America, but we have plenty of cowards and bootlickers, and once those fleshy dominoes start tumbling into the Trump camp, the game is up. When you talk about fleshy dominoes, Chris Christie comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So RFK went on to conclude that Trump was not Hitler, quote, because Hitler was interested in policy. So we have, he called Trump supporters belligerent idiots, outright Nazis, cowards, and bootlickers.
Yeah.
Well, what does that make you, fella?
Right.
What does that make you?
I mean, he actually explains it quite well. He's like, well, we don't have that many outright Nazis, but we do have a lot of like cowards and bootlickers who will fall like fleshy dominoes into his camp, and that's when we're in trouble. Like, oh, that describes your trajectory kind of perfectly. Because the second that you thought you could get something and get some, attention, notoriety, power, whatever, like all of your previous critiques of Trump just fell right away. And you were happy to pretend he was anti-war. You were happy to pretend he was anti-censorship. You're happy to pretend that he has some like critique of corporate power that you're going to be able to, use when his first administration, even if you take RFK seriously on his like, oh, let's get the natural ingredients into the foods and the bad stuff out of the foods or whatever. Like Trump's first administration is a case study in the polar opposite of that. It was like, let's get rid of all the regulations around, pesticides and chemicals, and let's screw over clean air and clean water, et cetera. So it's one of the most utterly shameless trajectories I've ever seen.
His thing was the environment. That was like his big thing for such a long time. Trump rolled back over 110 environmental protections. Over 110. He stands for the exact opposite of what RFK pretended he stood for his entire life.
Yeah.
So that's why I can't take these people seriously. I can't take J.D. Vance seriously. I can't take RFK seriously. I can't take Tulsi seriously. Michael Tracy was digging up videos of Tulsi from way back in 2019 where she was saying the most scathing stuff against Trump. Called him Saudi Arabia's bitch, saying he wants to, like, whore out our troops to go get killed to fight in other people's wars.
Yep.
Like, these people were relentless and ruthless in their criticism of Trump. And at no point do they actually try to square the circle here.
Right.
Oh, here's how I changed. Here's how I misinterpreted what Trump was and is. There's none of that. It just, it like, overnight, flip the switch, flip the script, and just hop on board the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And that's like, I've said this before. If you're an adult and you make a complete 180 transition in your beliefs, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. You're probably grifting. It's not sincere. It's one thing if you want to change 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 of your beliefs as you age. Yeah, that's called evolution. That's called growing. That's totally fine. But a complete, almost like a religious transition, almost like, well, I was Muslim and now I'm going to become a Christian. The adult converts are always the craziest for any religion, right? These people are treating politics like a religion, but the reality is it really is just a mask to try to get himself more power. RFK believes in RFK in the same way that Trump believes in Trump. And all they want to do is have that position of power, have that position of authority, get the adulation from the MAGA crowd. That's all he cares about. If you think he actually gives a shit about any of the things he pretended to care about, he doesn't. Which, by the way, is probably a better thing when it comes to RFK, because if he actually believes the anti-vaccine bullshit he spews, I don't want him at the head of HHS. I wouldn't want him within fucking 1,000 miles of HHS, because he's just wrong about the shit he talks about.
Well, I think it's quite clear he does believe that. I mean, that's one thing that has been consistent over time.
But so is the environment stuff,
being
right?
Completely anti-vax,
But the environment too, like his whole thing was the environment, and now he backed a candidate that rolled back over 110 environmental regulations.
Well, you remember when I interviewed him and I asked him about climate change, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not really going to talk about that," and I think that because
it's divisive,
and I think that the free market will solve the problems. It was like,
Yeah, I love
okay.
Mr.
And this is-
Anti-Big Pharma.
I was going to say, and this is Mr. Anti-Corporate, okay. And, and same thing when I would ask about, hey, what about, universal health care? What about, like, nationalize some of these pharmaceutical companies so you get the greed and the corruption out? No, not interested in that. So, there's, like, a surface level disconnect between the Elon Musk, Vivek, like, deregulatory, cutting to the bone, the institution of the government agencies and whatever, and what RFK purportedly stands for, which would require more regulations and more regulators in order to enforce like new, food laws and regime. But if you scratch 1 inch beneath the surface, all he does is sound like basically a, libertarian who's happy to strip government away. What he's more likely to do is totally, destroy those agencies, make it so that they're not doing the genuinely good and beneficial research that they've done, like at the NIH on infectious disease and developing new drug molecules. Like that's more likely what he's going to do.
Yeah, he thinks there's corruption at these agencies, so eliminate them. Whereas the real thing to do would be there's corruption, get rid of the corruption, and get them back to actually regulating effectively.
Yeah,
because
they
what
need
Trump
to be
does,
strengthened.
Trump wants to put oil executives as at the head of the EPA, right? And it's like the reason they're familiar with the regulatory state is because they're used to evading regulations. That's why they're there. It's the antithesis of who should be in that position. But like, yeah, the thing about nationalizing Big Pharma always got me with RFK. All he does is beat up on Big Pharma all day. And then you said, okay, so should we get rid of the profit motive and nationalize Big Pharma? And he was like, no, I wouldn't do that. Well, then what the fuck are you bitching about all day long about Big Pharma? The problem with him is his arguments are effectively Big Pharma is poisoning you on purpose. That's what it's doing. And the medicine doesn't work. And that's not true. The problem with Big Pharma is the price gouging. The medicine actually works. If I get an infection, I want to take antibiotics. I want to take a vaccine so I don't get the viruses that would come if I don't take the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
But he totally flips it. And this is what happened a lot online. People have taken their skepticism and turned it into cynicism and gone way too many steps too far. And it became, I'm anti-Big Pharma to I'm anti-modern medicine.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
It goes from anti-Big Pharma to just anti-vaccine. It's
yeah,
like,
and
actually,
anti-modern
modern medicine is good.
Correct. Modern medicine is good, and the problem is the price gouging. That's what you need to address. It's not has nothing to do with let's ban all the vaccines on the market, right? Or whatever the fuck else he wants to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you can tell, we've both had it with these idiots. But this was RFK back when
he made sense on
he made
Trump.
a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
And now he obviously sold his soul.